Hey everyone, this is Greg, your host of Goddamn Gamecube. Thank you for tuning in to Season 2. All episodes in this season were conducted virtually over the internet because of the coronavirus pandemic, so please excuse any audio glitches or oddities you may hear during these episodes. Thank you and enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube, the best goddamn video game podcast there is. And today we are going to be talking about Mass Effect 3. The Legendary Edition drops this Friday as of when we're recording this. I am going to kick this to Beppy. This is sort of a controversial game, but we will talk about the positives and the negatives. So Beppy, take it away.
Yeah, before we get too far, I think if you're just joining us for the first time, I think it's worth Greg mentioning his thesis statement about BioWare trilogies and how they shake out. Do you want to just do that really quick?
Yeah, sure. So I've expressed this mantra on various episodes and to my friends in various forums in real life. So I just feel like with BioWare, like the first game in the franchise is really interesting and quirky, and then the second one is more balls to the wall, but it's not as interesting, and then the third one is like a compromise of those things, but I just don't like it. and I like Dragon Age is the same way, and I kind of feel the same way about this game. So it's almost like, I don't know, man. I feel like they try to take the best of both worlds, and then I don't know. It doesn't really work for me, but let's get into the nitty gritty. So I will kick it back to Beppy, and we've got Noah and Nick Monahan here with us again. So Beppy, go ahead.
That's right. I just wanted to get that little preamble out of the way in your own words.
Sure. Yeah.
So for in essence, this game released in 2012. It was meant to release a couple months earlier. But it was delayed. Thankfully, it kind of already shows some, kind of cut corners, signs like that, just kind of maybe ran out of time. Certain things probably would have been expanded more had they had more time to work on it. But in terms of sort of the direction that this game takes, it's a lot more straightforward than the other two. It's a lot more linear. It is very action oriented. They tried to implement a little bit of the RPG mechanics back in. Do you guys have any strong feelings about how that was executed?
Sure. Yeah, I do. So I replayed all of these for the sake of this discussion, and I remember texting you guys in this little group chat that we have that I actually thought this is like, I really felt the jump in quality of the combat and how the RPG stuff and the shooting was linked together. Like I feel like with Mass Effect 1, you have your RPG stuff and your powers, but it's kind of clunky. And in 2, it's tighter, but it doesn't really work for me. I feel like something that did work for me in Mass Effect 3 was how those things were combined. So you have more stats to distribute into now, kind of like Mass Effect 1. You don't quite get it all. And I think it has the punch from 2. And I think it finally kind of came together as, I think, a pretty good third-person shooter. Nick, I know you had a thought, so why don't you go next on this stuff?
I would say I pretty much agree with what's been said here about it being a good compromise between having the ability to customize your abilities and your stats slightly more granular than 2, but not to the degree that 1 is, because the game isn't really built as an RPG. It's built as a linear shooter with RPG elements. It lets you bring back some of that strategy that I think was not lost in 2, but kind of pushed to the wayside in 2, because in 1 you could get a lot more granular with the power wheel and the orders and stuff like that.
Yeah, like 2 was like overly streamlined for my taste.
The perks are like meaningful too. I mean, like
yeah,
different things
that's
you
a
can
big
get
deal.
from it. They do a little bit of the same with the weapons. I think I didn't mess around with them like much, because they seem to be like the trade-offs you do by swapping out parts seems to be like significant, but I feel like it encourages sort of specializing or making a certain weapon behave in a particular way that's like very customizable. I think in general, like the weapon palette is very strong in this game. I
also really liked on the subject of weapons. I actually really like there is weapon encumbrance in this game.
Yes. It affects your power cooldown.
Yeah, I forgot about that until I played it. I thought that was really neat. Where I believe all classes can use all weapons in this game.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what I found interesting was I was like, oh, is this going to just be kind of sloppy? No, where certain classes get bonuses to encumbrance and can carry more weight, which means they in theory could handle bigger guns and have 5 or, have all the different varieties. I thought that was very neat. I forgot they did that. And having it cool down your powers slower, I thought was a really cool trade-off. So I guess a hat tip to them because it surprised me.
Yeah, and that's a really good design for that because, as a powers-based class, like say you're playing an adept or a sentinel or something, you could bring an assault rifle, but most of those are on the heavier side, and you're really not going to be doing a lot of shooting. So if you need something automatic, you're probably going to bring like either a shotgun and a pistol or an SMG and a pistol or something a little lighter. I mean, the shotguns can get kind of heavy too, but like it kind of forces you to think like, okay, what kind of class am I? Do I really need to bring 4 weapons, even though I can? It's like, well, no, you don't need to, so don't.
Right.
I appreciate that much. And I think another thing tangential to the weapons is how I think the sound design is maybe my favorite aspect of this game. It's just everything sounds terrific. All the weapons, the Reaper noises and everything. I think it's very next level. In essence, I guess to get to the point of this game is that the Reapers arrive in pretty much the opening scene. A great deal of this game is spent filling up this meter that you accrue, in essence, war assets to overwhelm them. And there's certain like thresholds that you need to pass in order to get into this later, but in order to unlock certain endings, you have to have a certain amount, and that is the numbers are kind of governed by your choices through the trilogy and through this game. I think it's a cool idea, even if it's not like executed super well, especially at the ending. I don't know. Do you guys have any strong feelings about that aspect of the game?
Yeah, I remember I commented in the chat where I kind of like it how Nick, you were talking to me about this off mic, where the tone of this game feels right, where just it's very what's the word you used?
3 is a lot more just like dire and like oppressive and like the end of the world or end of the universe kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic, yeah.
And like I think the word dire was the word I was looking for. That's where like this readiness meter kind of makes sense to me, where I was like, we already know what the plot is. Like we know what's going on. We have to prepare and we have to be able to fight back. So we need resources to do it. What's funny is like this game, it kind of like it gave me a bad taste in my mouth from Fable 3 that I think did the same thing. Am I wrong?
I remember that.
I don't remember. Yeah. That game blows.
That's a great analogy. I remember that, where basically you're fucked and you're just prepping the whole time, going to the place where you're gonna get fucked.
Right. It's like you have this meter where it's like how many people in the world will die unless you get enough money or something stupid like that. But like,
absolutely.
I forget whether it was Noah or Nick told me this, but in Mass Effect 3, like multiplayer is actually a part of this, which I didn't know that. But I mean, I guess I don't love that. But the readiness meter at least makes sense in universe, so I think
they're
it's
fixing
fine.
The multiplayer requirement with the Legendary Edition, since the multiplayer unfortunately is not coming back.
And that is it. Actually, it was way more fun than I expected it to be, just because the like core gameplay is so strong, I guess. But yeah, that was part of the like if you wanted 100%, you needed to like level up your characters in that. I think not a fan, but that was kind of the beginning of the foray into. There's some signs of compromise in this game. This is kind of like a very early, with respect to the multiplayer, very early instance of loot crates as we know them today. Microtransactions were already kind of a thing for a couple of years, but this was kind of, I remember just at the time, this game just got so much bad press. You couldn't stop hearing like bad news about it. And it's not like, I think the consensus here is that we generally enjoy the game up to a point. But it's just like little kind of shortcuts here and there mixed with kind of some underhanded business tactics at the time that kind of soured me when I played it for the first time. I mean, I think Greg and I were talking about this also. Another strange choice with respect to like the main story was how you can play it 3 different ways. Like you can play it traditionally, or you can play it focused on combat or dialogue. Wherein if you select combat, like it'll just make all your choices for you.
That was so weird, dude. Like when I started this game up, I was like, I also have to kind of keep the perspective in mind of when this game came out, and maybe that was a thing at the time. But I looked at these options, and I had to read it a couple of times, because I was like, you're telling me I can just skip like half of what made the first game really good if I want to? I just don't have to like make any choices at all.
I know.
Like, or like I
Not
can
that
skip
there are
combat
many
in
to
its
begin
entirety.
with, but
No, I know, but what I'm saying is like I don't understand like this compromised experience. That was weird to me. That why wouldn't I don't know. It's not like you said, it's not like there's much to choose. It's not like the depth of the first game, but even if it was, I don't understand taking that choice away from players or making that an option. I hated that. I don't know why you would pick that. Go ahead, Noah.
My typical like cynical response to this kind of thing is that, you know, the more accessible your game is, the younger of a gamer that can play it, and the more likely a parent is to buy it for their kid, right? And what do the shareholders want?
Right.
That. What do 6-year-olds want? They just want to shoot shit, you know? So, you know, if you're 9 or whatever, and you're not considering, you know, life and death of a species, you're just kind of blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it all comes from. That's one of my, you know, gripes with modern gaming, is kind of sacrificing the enjoyment of the adult gamer for the sake of selling it to kids.
Or like a more casual.
Let's dumb it down.
Because the there's some really like kind of stupid dialogue in this game, and it's like a shame because of how not highbrow the first game is, but it's thoughtful, it's contemplative. There's some things that the first, and to an extent the second game, where like they kind of took me by surprise by how maybe not profound, but it gives you a little bit more pause to think about it.
It loses some of the space opera like charm and goes a little more in for like the space action adventure, I guess, or something.
Specifically, our friend Derek and I were talking about this, and he reminded me of this line where you're on the Turian moon, and one of your squad mates says, "Hey, those Reapers look like Turians," and Shepard goes, "You're right, they do." It's like, all right. Well, you know, you could have communicated that in a perfectly normal, natural way, but it just really like beats you over the head with it.
Or at least sound more concerned.
I don't know,
dude.
It was strange.
I just think if we're talking about dialogue, something that like really, it was interesting. It didn't bother me when I first started playing, but the more that I played this, the more that it bothered me. It just felt like all the dialogue was missing, or like there are so many side quests and stuff where you overhear it, like you don't really talk to people. And it's really weird.
The side quests in particular, like...
Dude,
oof.
They're so weird. Like, whether you overhear quests or you go to turn them in and you don't really... it's strange. It's just, there's a lot of, like, weird fetch quests and weird... I don't know. This game just... Beppy, I think you described it as, like, a lot of the side quests just kind of feel like bones of a game.
Yeah.
Where it's like the quests are there, but I don't... It felt like very...
in essence, I just...
Like a chore list.
I didn't like it in that sense, because I know what it's like to have a functioning journal and quests from the previous games. Like, I think very few quests in those games like bugged out for me and were unfinishable. In this game, there were quite a few, and they were all Like the Citadel in this game is very bizarre, and in essence, most of the quests are just outside of the main story and quests related to your squad mates. It's all just kind of, you go to, like, you do the planet scanning thing from 2, and you find something that you overheard 2 people talking about, and you don't even open up a conversation with them. You just run over to them and say, hey, I got those whatever from planet XYZ. It's so strange.
Yeah, it's like you just happen to like think of them while you were out doing your thing. Like, hey, I got
the way,
this little trinket for you.
I know you didn't know I was listening. I'm actually Commander Shepard. I'm out and about, so I figured I'd stop by.
Can you imagine if like a Medal of Honor recipient just like showed up one day and was just like, hey, I found your ring that you lost. I overheard you talking about it the other day. Like, what?
dude, and it's
Do
like,
you think maybe like with side quest design, there was kind of a sense of, hey, you know, we're kind of wrapping this trilogy up. Let's just funnel people, you know, always kind of back towards the main story.
That's what
arc.
I'm thinking.
And, you know, maybe there was
I
a
think
sense
the same
of
thing about
like,
the dialogue
hey,
too.
there's
I
think it was,
there's like less to explore. It's less exploratory.
because you've
right?
already
explored,
you know what the deal is.
and then now it's just kind of down to the wire. I don't detest it for taking a different structure or anything like that. It's just, it feels a little disjointed with the other 2 games. I mean, it's a kind of a disjointed trilogy, to be honest.
I mean, it honestly,
sure.
it honestly kind of feels like they did it for the numerics purposes. Like, you know, how do we get people to raise their readiness? You can do these side quests, and sometimes you get like readiness points, or you find stuff, or you find fleets. I think it was a way to sort of set people up for better endings or better outcomes if they just do the things.
Yeah.
I think it was more of like I think it was kind of a utilitarian thing. I mean, the more I played it, the more it just felt like a slog, and I hated it. But like, I guess I understand the purpose
just
of it.
Just putting a little more content in there, especially if you didn't play the first 2.
I think it's a combination of intentional design, and also what Beppy was talking about earlier with like the behind the scenes stuff of how it was maybe a little rushed, and just because like it's such a bummer how much of, you know, we don't get to see of like the hub areas and stuff. Like, you know, not even the Citadel, which, you know, to say nothing of how truncated the Citadel is. There's like 3 locations that are tiny or something that you go to.
Well, Greg and I actually had a little discussion about that, because I'm pretty sure the Citadel is the only hub, right? There's no.
Well, yeah. So, but like going back to like, if you think about Mass Effect 2, for example, when you go to like Tuchanka or Ilium or Omega and stuff like that, like those are, I guess, mini hubs. I mean Omega's probably more, because that's like the evil Citadel, I guess. But like, you think about like Tuchanka or like the planets you go to for missions, even somewhere like Tuchanka still has like little side things for you to do, like shooting the monkeys, and like,
it also
other side quests for you to do aside from Grunt's loyalty mission.
Even though
and you don't get any of that in this.
Even though those are small little areas that kind of feel like a Carmen Sandiego game or something, but if you compare them to the Citadel in this game, I was telling Greg about it. It's kind of, you pretty much just select an area from like an elevator, and it's just pretty much, it feels like they maybe intended to link them better, like, you know, just make it feel like a more interconnected experience. But as it is, it kind of just feels like you're selecting like half finished levels from like a menu, and it's just kind of very reductive. And that is like, it's one of the RPG elements that kind of suffers, in my opinion.
Well, even if you look at the Citadel in 2, it's more interconnected. Like, there's still a bunch of like fast traveling that you do and stuff, but even then, like, you can go through multiple levels
floors.
of Zakara Ward. You can go up and down the stairs to different areas, and you can find stuff, and it feels like you're moving around in the Citadel. Whereas in 3, you're
They're
just
like
nope,
hallways.
take the elevator, take the taxi.
Yeah,
they're just little slices. Like, the hospital's tiny, and like the Presidium that you get to go to is really small too.
Yeah, well, how do you guys feel about like the way this game looks? I think in general it's pretty strong, but I do have some gripes, but I'd like to hear from you first.
No,
I think it's definitely ahead of its time. And I mean, just, you know, this is one of those things where, like, if you're a game reviewer, right, if you're talking about the aesthetics, okay, it's not, developed that much, right, in terms of the look, but it's still cohesive and unique, and it's not, it has that feeling of being, yeah, this is Mass Effect, not generic space shooter number 26.
I think like maybe my only major gripe is that I think I would have liked to have spent more time on the other species planets and seen them kind of differentiate a little bit more. I get, like, besides Tuchanka, I feel like they're kind of unmemorable. Maybe you disagree, but I mean, I guess, do you guys have anything else to add before we get into like the main story? Or
Yeah, sure. I think you and I think all of you kind of mentioned this already. I think a reason why that happens is the nature of this game being more linear. Like, there aren't hub worlds besides the Citadel. You don't really walk around and talk to anybody. There's nothing like Novaria or, whatever, fill in the blank. And it just, I think it all comes back to this just being more of a linear game. Like, when it comes to the aesthetic, I think this game looks really good for what it is, but you don't really get to see any of the planets because you run down a hallway in all of them, right?
Yeah.
Or almost all of them.
Yeah.
It's just, that's kind of what it is. Like, I'm just trying to think of a moment, like, on what's one of the early missions, the Turian moon or something?
Yeah.
Right?
Caliban.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of get to go, but not really. Like, and when I say this, like, I kind of critique the first game in this way, where the first game does this the best, but it's not like you get a lot. You know what I mean? It's not like, these hub worlds are these massive planets, and I just feel like in this game you just get nothing. Not really. The game looks good, but there isn't much to see because of the nature of it's kind of a hallway. But I don't know.
There's even a couple things though about, like, I mean, I think obviously this game knocks it out of the park, like Noah said, with differentiating itself from the pack in terms of like being a sci-fi universe. Like, you can look at something and instantaneously tell that it's Mass Effect most of the time, and I think they do that very well here. And I think in terms of fidelity for 2012 third-person shooter RPG, it looks good. And there's a lot of inspired presentation and like character design, enemy design. Like the Reaper corrupted versions of all the different races that just look all fucked up and all that. Like, that's really cool. But I mean, I guess I didn't really speak up about it in the first game's episode, but I don't really like the film grain. I don't like that effect. I'm a hater of most visual effects. Like, fuck off motion blur, depth of field, get the fuck out of here. My eyes do that for me. I don't need that.
Sure.
And there's two things that I mean, the film grain I don't like, but also I feel like the vignette, like the like weird black tunnel that it's like slightly at the edge of the screen all the time.
Instagram thing. Yeah, I know what you.
Yeah, that's always there. I think it's called the vignette.
Yeah, it slightly darkens the corners.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you turn it on in this game, I feel like it's worse than the other two, where it's like, and I know it's probably because they want it to feel more oppressive and like dark,
Controlled,
literally and figuratively, but it just looks bad, and I always try to get rid of it.
Well, I think that might be a visual effect of the time. I think, Noah, you brought this up actually in Mass Effect 1, where like, I'm going to turn the film grain off. Whoa, it looks like shit. I'm turning it back on. Right?
See, I always turned it off, and I never thought it looked bad.
Okay, so let's shall we dive right in here?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was actually not expecting this game to start the way it does. I don't know, I wasn't expecting the Reapers to show up like 30 seconds in. It works pretty well. It's just kind of weird that they make a big deal out of, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, that they're trapped in dark space, and then they just kind of it takes like a couple years, but they get there like fine. So it's like, why even bother like making a big show of yourselves in terms of the events of Mass Effect 1 and 2? It doesn't really, I don't get.
Well, doesn't the Arrival DLC show that they're like getting closer though by this point?
I think the Arrival DLC is when they are going to enter the system via a different relay.
Right, because you blow the mass relay and it destroys the Batarian colony, which is what Shepard is on trial for at the start of 3.
Right.
So 3 doesn't take place that far after 2.
I don't believe so. I think it's maybe 6 months.
Okay,
But-
I think that actually is correct.
It's a strange kind of premise. I get why they did it, but it's strange to me because it's a little like nobody is really prepared for this, and you're kind of like trying to prepare people after the fact, like after they're already invading. And I just like I never got the impression that that everyone would even stand a chance. And it's like because they're so. I didn't get why the Reapers didn't just show up and just start like the Covenant, just like glassing every planet like instantly.
Yeah, I was struggling with that too, where it's like,
Seemed really
okay,
OP.
so you're kind of looking at the scale of these things. Like, I mean, are those a little smaller than I thought they were? And that's why you can still shoot them with a starship, right? You're just kind of trying to explain away the fact that, yeah, there is this ongoing battle that's in theory taking place throughout the entire time you're playing this game. And there's that line, every minute, thousands of people die. It's like, fuck, what's the total after I've been playing this game for 100 hours or whatever?
Right.
Side quests.
Quite a few.
I think the game does do a decent job of kind of showing you like even if you win, it's going to be at a high cost, sort of thing. I think like because throughout, even when you do win, you just lose so much anyway, and like the only victories you really get are the ones that are like personal victories for the characters or for like one race. Like if you manage to successfully get the Quarians back to their homeworld and not get destroyed by the Geth, that's a victory, even though like the Reapers are still out there. But anytime you actually go up against the Reapers and win, it's always a Pyrrhic victory, like pretty much every time.
Yeah, you pretty much like they invent or they introduce these smaller Reapers that are easier to kill, and that's kind of like where you get your wins from. But you start out on Earth. They do deliver a lot of kind of sort of dangling threads of this series, wherein you finally see Earth in person, and they show up, and you're actually, I think you're on trial in the beginning of this game, and you kind of can present yourself one way or the other, but you either way get your hands back on the Normandy, which has changed a little bit. And I was actually telling Greg about this, that I like it a lot in this game because once the military got their hands on it, they really fucked it. Like, it's just like there's junk everywhere and it's just really uncomfortable. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like they wouldn't care about luxury, like in terms of like inheriting a Cerberus transport. They just like threw everything everywhere and made it what they needed it to be.
I think it's also in the middle of the retrofit, isn't it? Like when shit pops off, so you're kind of still like rolling around with like a half-finished ship or something.
Yeah, a lot of like rooms from 2 are repurposed into like storage rooms and closets, and they're moving stuff around. I loved it. It felt like very lived in as the space. This is kind of like, because I when I replay this game, I get really into it at first, and then the little things start creeping in. And I think for me, like, because Nick and I actually, we talked about James Vega, and I'm like neutral on him. He's definitely kind of to facilitate like the new audiences. Do you guys have any strong feelings about that character?
You mean Joe Rogan?
He definitely listens to him for sure.
I like him. And again, this goes back to why like I didn't mind Caden. Well, it's like I'm just, I'm the military sci-fi guy, and he's just this big soldier man. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you he's the most nuanced or like, most likable character, but I like his banter with Shepard because it's kind of refreshingly like the way he comes across very familiar with Shepard, even though you've never met him.
Yeah,
is very military, because it's like they're both the same.
It's a shared
in terms
experience.
Of like,
yeah,
exactly. And there's a conversation you can have with him later in the game, because he's up for possibly going into the N7 program like Shepard, which is basically like the toughest military training program there is. And he's like, I don't know if I want to do it or not, and blah, blah, blah. And like, you can actually have a pretty cool conversation with him, where you can either like tell him that he's not quite up to it, or you can sort of be like, yeah, no, definitely do it. And like, it's this really inspiring sort of thing where you get to be like, just like a cool mentor figure to somebody, which you really aren't for a lot of the other characters, because a lot of the other characters are kind of their own thing.
Yeah.
And you have a friendship with them and you influence them, but you never really feel like their superior officer. You just kind of feel like their friend.
Yeah.
And so in this, you actually get to kind of like RP the military aspect of Shepard's background, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a good point, because and he is also kind of he doesn't really butt heads with you at all. Besides, you have a little like friendly boxing match at one point. But he's also like he's very like low drama, which I appreciate.
Yes.
And now that I've watched Rebels, I appreciate Freddie Prinze Jr. a lot more.
Freddie Prinze Jr.
But this is shortly thereafter you link up with Liara again, who's on Mars, and the Vermeer survivor, which is a cool kind of you know they're back in your squad, and they still don't quite trust you. I think it's an interesting point that they initially, I think an early idea was to have them kind of be hunting you because they weren't, you know, they were suspicious of your motives, and they're kind of dispatched to, I don't know about taking you down, but like in essence, just tracking you the same way that you tracked Saren in the first game. And that would have been awesome.
That's actually I didn't know that. That's actually pretty
because
neat.
they're a
Before we get
Spectre
too
now,
far,
yeah.
Can we just go back really quick to Vega?
Yeah.
I also really like his interactions with Cortez, the shuttle pilot.
Oh yeah,
Because
I forgot about that
Cortez
guy.
is a really interesting character, too, because you know, he has a past, and you know he lost his husband, I believe.
Yeah,
Was it to the Reapers or was it something else?
I can't remember.
I always forget.
I think you're right. I think it was an invasion, right? Am I right? I think it was a part of this.
Him and Cortez have just like a really good rapport, and you know they're always like bantering across the hangar bay to each other when you're down there, like customizing your gear and stuff.
Yeah,
It just kind of it's like you said, it gives the ship kind of more of like a lived-in feel, which I think was honestly missing from the first two games in terms of like hearing people on the ship discussing things.
you can walk in on people having
independent of you.
conversations a lot more, like people who
Yeah.
don't necessarily hang out in the same areas. Like they'll move around a little bit. And I did like that they added some new human faces to the crew. To make them, you know, likable is tough. But you kind of you can get all your old people back over the course of the game. You can get all the Engineer Adams and the two from Mass Effect 2. You can pretty much you know, all the side characters can rejoin you. I am like pretty disappointed with the squad palette in this game, which we're kind of, you know, getting into now, because in essence I think it was a resource management thing where a good deal of them could die in the previous game. So I think only Garrus and Tali are the only people who return into your squad. So it's a shame, because you know, in Mass Effect 2, you meet all these new people and you work with them and you're kind of like, no, I want my old friends back. But then like you get attached to those characters and they kind of are relegated to the sidelines in this one, and I didn't love that, because they do all have their own little mission, most of them anyway, and I think like most of them are good. They
kill a lot of them.
They do. It's kind of strange also, I didn't mention this earlier, that in the journal that the main story missions are labeled priority, and that really confused me and my college roommate when we were playing this, because we both thought that meant that those were like timed, and it's actually the ones that don't say priority are timed. And because you can't you know, like characters like Grunt have their own mission, and Jack and all those people, and those will expire after a certain amount of time. I'm not sure if it's after a couple story missions or just time
it's
spent playing the
it's
game.
scripted by what main mission you've completed,
Right.
I believe.
So they'll disappear. I just wish it had been clearer.
I didn't know that in Jack's case, so she didn't do well.
No, I do. I mean, I feel like that they deserved more screen time for that, but I did appreciate this game. in a lot of ways, mainly in terms of the voiceover work, does pay attention to a lot of the tiny little micro choices you made. And only really, I mean, it's a shame that it doesn't amount to more than like numbers on your chart, because it's kind of like, or for instance, you were talking about Jack, like if you don't rescue her at Grissom Academy, which is a pretty fun mission, in essence, she will be corrupted by Cerberus, I think, like brainwashed and turned into
She
an
gets
enemy.
turned into a phantom, which is a common enemy type.
Yeah.
They have like the sword and stuff like that.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that there's, and Morinth can come back if you saved her in the previous game. She comes back as an enemy, Asari Reaper, and that kind of thing, which is kind of cool. But yeah, early on into the game, they throw a couple things at you that I really don't like. And number one is that Edie gets transplanted into this very erotic robot body. And I think this was like leaked before the game came out. And I was like, oh no, this has to be fake. And then it happened. And I was like, oh, I don't know about this one.
I mean, part of nerd culture is some developers can't resist slathering some part of their game with the whole, tight pants, noticeable features on female characters deal. And it does appeal to some people, I guess, right? Teenagers.
You know what I think it was, though, is that Edie's voiced by Trisha Helfer of Battlestar Galactica fame.
Yeah.
And I think they were just like, well, she's got to play the sexy robot, right?
Oh my
She was a sexy robot on Galactica, so she's a sexy robot in this.
What was our quote from the first episode? Are you sure this isn't like a weird alien sex game? What did you say, Noah? Something like that?
Something like that.
But it felt so tasteless to me because her and Joker's relationship in the previous game was very, it was just kind of fun. Like it was just some camaraderie, and it's like now they're just banging. I'm just like, I didn't need to see this. Like you didn't need to go this far. And she's like a mandatory squad member. It's just
because it was almost like a Lando and L3 thing with the Millennium Falcon from the Solo movie.
A little bit, yeah. But
but it was like Joker in the Normandy, but now it's like Joker in the sex bot. So it's like,
yeah, you can see the meeting right where this went down. They're focusing so hard on trying to wrap the story up, and they're like, shit, guys, we forgot to put the sex in. What do we do? Sex robot,
like some Dog Simpson level shit.
Okay.
Even in terms of like new squad mates, like you get her, and if you pay to get the on disc DLC, which was another controversy, you can get the Prothean squad mate. I love him, and it's pretty.
He's awesome.
It's pretty. I don't know. I mean, because in essence, you go back to Eden Prime and you find him in a sarcophagus, and he's just an asshole. It's just like, how have you guys not figured this out? Like in essence, his people unfortunately got wiped out. And you see a little bit of a flashback. They do say in Mass Effect 1 though that like only the scientists were left alive. So I guess we're retconning a little bit there, but I do like him a lot. I like his perspective. He's pretty funny. He's just very kind of no nonsense, and probably like my favorite squad mate of the game.
He has a lot of very good lines about like talking to the other characters. Like I think it's like Liara, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember when the Asari were just like, a bunch of, I don't know,
fish
like
or something,
fish living in this, and like, because he's from before all of these races were spacefaring or advanced, and he's like, oh yeah, humans were banging sticks together or whatever. I don't know, like
exactly.
It's really funny.
Yeah, I liked him a lot. But this is also very early in the game. You're also introduced to Kai Lang, who is they needed an antagonist for Shepard, so they brought in seemingly someone from like Metal Gear Rising.
Yeah,
he's like
brought in Raiden to do this one.
I just thought it was really like off message and strange.
Yes.
that there's like a cyborg ninja, and not only that, he's responsible for killing a very beloved character, so it just makes it even worse. I just like that. It's like I say, I try to, when I start this game over, I try to give it a fair shake, and then these little things that I just can't get over, it just really like start to get under my skin. But yeah.
To be fair, even though he does mortally wound Thane does make him look like an absolute bitch in that fight.
Sure.
It's really funny. And he fails his mission.
And if you don't have Thane, he shoots Captain Kirrahe from the Mass Effect 1.
Hold the line.
Yeah, it's interesting that they kind of like, if you don't have a certain character, they just kind of replace them with like a less interesting one.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
I think a really good quote that you said to me was, "Who are all these people?" Right? Like they're like, yeah. I think I told you guys this. Like the flaws that we're talking about right now, they get really, really blown to a million if you don't import a save. Like this game is like really weird if you don't. Like I purposely didn't, just to kind of see what would happen. Like none of this shit happens. Like it's so weird.
Yeah.
You have like not what's like Rex's brother's name, or not, what's his name?
Reeve.
You have like Erdnot Reeve, and I went to Grissom Academy. I didn't see Jack. I didn't see any Morinth. I didn't see anybody. Like there's just it's so weird. They either replace characters with these characters you've never heard of, or they just don't do anything at all.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre. And the choices that you make, you don't even like, it's so interesting when you start the game, they don't even ask you like, I don't know what I was expecting, but they don't even ask you like all the choices from the main games.
Yeah.
Like about the suicide mission or Rex or anything like that. And I'm just like, I don't know, man. You can continue, because I'm just going to go down a rabbit hole here, but my experience was really weird.
I think in general, it just became problematic with how many choices there were and how that kind of exponentially, like all these, it would necessitate so much work and so many different outcomes for everything. And unfortunately, there's kind of just like, there's like a canon path in this game, I think, where you like do everything right and you save everybody, and kind of the alternatives are just kind of objectively bad. like
Yeah.
If you don't have Mordin, you get some guy, and it's just not like, the emotional context of the scene just isn't there, and it's kind of your fault for letting him die, but it's still just like, we talked a little bit about this in the first game with Paragon versus Renegade, and how much of that was time well spent. And I don't know. I just like, I'm backseat driving here a little bit, but I think it would have been a better use of resources to kind of cultivate different, like maybe make it a little bit of a shorter game, and then just cultivate all these different possibilities of what could happen. Because in essence, like the first act is sort of building up to curing the genophage, which is a great scene. And
I really enjoyed that.
If you decide not to do it, like, you're such an asshole.
Yeah, you're such an asshole. And I'd love to touch on that. I was most excited about that aspect of this entire story, of this entire trilogy, because so often, right, you meet this race in a really cool sci-fi game and you find them interesting. I always like warrior-like races, right? But then often there's some tragic part of a new alien race that you've just met, their background, that you can't do anything about it. And in this series, we do get to reverse the genophage and kind of provide kind of new life for this interesting race that we've met. And very rarely in a sci-fi game do you get to kind of change the course of kind of a new society that you meet. So I thought that was cool.
Also, like, it kind of ties into like Mordin again, who I think is like one of the best characters.
Yeah.
Where I was talking to Nick about this, where I said Morden, I found him so funny, where it's like he says some very very disconnected line where the Shepard asks him like, "Oh, what changed? Like, what changed your feelings?" He said, "Oh, my feelings haven't changed. Situation calls for different solution."
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like
I mentioned that too during
so
the Mass Effect 2
endearing.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I like that he is one of those characters where you don't actually fundamentally alter his outlook. You just make like he's the ultimate pragmatist. Like he is just a man of science and reason. And when he realizes that, oh no, we should probably undo this, it's not necessarily for moral reasons, at least not that he lets on. He's just saying,
he never like says it outright. There's only kind of like this scene when you go into that hospital in the second game, and he's kind of taking a moment, like there's a female Krogan that's died or something, and he just kind of is. You can't talk to him for a second because he's so absorbed in the ramifications of what he's done. So he's very like on the surface, he's very kind of no, it's all part of my plan. It's like no, I never changed my mind, but it's great because that it pays off a lot of character arcs. It pays off a long kind of series arc. I think it's maybe the strongest feels that I got in this game.
For sure.
Yeah.
Just building up like all because all the different races have had a hand in it. So you're messing around with the Turians and the Solarians, and it's terrific. I think that's when there's the little like Citadel interlude where Cerberus shows up.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like I don't know. It doesn't like sit perfectly right with me, even though it makes sense. Something about the execution of that sequence is really weird to me.
It was quite odd.
Involved probably, but it's strange because it's also you find out that Udina, who is now a counselor, no matter what, he has betrayed you. He's been working with Cerberus. And does he die in this sequence or is that later?
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, I brought this up in the chat. I said, oh, thank God you get like a renegade option that actually like a renegade, like a, what's the word? Interrupt.
Yeah.
Like a trigger option that actually feels good and makes sense. And I said, fuck yeah. Like, thank God I get to take a shot at this guy.
What is the
God.
context of that? Yeah. I forgot.
Yeah.
So he's being evacuated and he's being protected by the Vermeer survivor, actually.
Right.
Because they don't know what he's done. He's just being evacuated because of the Cerberus attack, and you know that he's in on it. So you show up and you come to like arrest him or whatever. And the Vermeer survivor confronts you and is like, "Hey, what the fuck are you doing, Shepard?" And Udina uses that opportunity to pull a gun on you, and you can renegade, interrupt, and shoot him.
Yeah, and it goes even deeper too, where this is like one of the few story beats in the games where like your choices and your stats like all felt like they were very vital and like doing the right thing really mattered in this moment. Yeah. Like you can fail this and kill, like, for example, you can kill Ashley.
Yeah.
Or like one of your party members will. Like if you can't pull the trigger or you can't stop it, which I thought was really cool. Like there are very like rare moments in the Mass Effect games for me where I felt like the choices I made not only mattered in the game but mattered to me.
Yeah.
Like shit. Like I don't want to shoot Ashley, and please stand down. So I want to make sure I can convince her of this. And I actually really liked this moment. Number one, it was funny to like take a shot at Udina because I really wanted to for like most of the game. And I went on YouTube and I watched like how you can screw it up, and I said, Jesus Christ. Like, if you end up, saving the Vermeer survivor, in my case, Ashley, she ends up joining your party too. So you can miss like a vital part of the game. So, I mean, finally, there's like a consequence in this game. And this is one of them. So I think this was actually a good moment, a moment that I like that I won't critique. Well, I thought it was good.
I do have actually that you're putting some certain things into context for me. And something that is great about this game and why the early sections I think are so great is that this is the point in the series where they kind of have to play for keeps, and they have to like these storylines got to end somehow. So you could very easily just kill this character for the rest of the series, and but you still have time to absorb the loss or to see the story grow from that. As you go on, there's less opportunities for that to happen in this game, and I think that's maybe that's why, as it like I know over the course of the game it's apparent that they ran out of resources. Like you can kind of tell at a certain point when it's like they put all this work into the Genophage plotline, and then you get into Act 2 is mainly about like the Geth and the Quarians and resolving their two-state solution there. I like that section a lot. Maybe not so much as the first one, but I did think it paid off reasonably well one way or another.
I love that section mainly because on my first playthrough of that game, it fucked me up.
Oh yeah.
Emotionally.
Damn.
Because I romanced Tally, and I was doing the non-committal, like I'm gonna play it as I see it as myself in terms of the morality system.
Yeah.
So neither my Paragon nor my Renegade was high enough to make them stop fucking killing each other.
Yeah.
So the Geth destroyed the Quarian fleet and like killed them all. And then so Tally jumps off a cliff.
Right.
And there's a Paragon interrupt to catch her. So you jump down and like throw your hand out, and the camera just shows Shepard, and then it pulls back, and you didn't catch her, and she's fucking dead. And I was like,
wow.
Like I paused the game. I was like, what?
Yeah. No, I mean it's a great sequence. I like that when you go into the Geth server. That's a pretty cool one. It is very much kind of a test of how well you can, because if you get both of them on your side, it's like a huge amount of resources that contribute towards the final battle. And everybody loves Legion, and Legion has to die one way or another. They really they do the George R. R. Martin thing where they kill the most interesting characters, so you're kind of just left with the worst ones.
Yeah.
But
Except G Money, Garrus sticks around.
Yes, of course. If you don't romance either of them, Garrus and Tali will also hook up. I forgot about that. I was revisiting that. Yeah.
Wow.
So again, like we were saying earlier, is that, like, your crew members kind of have lives outside of what you are personally involved with, which is cool. And I guess before we get into the final act here, did you guys mess around with any of the DLC at all? Like
I did not actually.
Really?
I'm playing them for the first time in Legendary when it comes out.
Yeah, I think they add a lot to this game. I think because the Omega one, I believe, came out first. Omega is kind of it's very important in the previous game, and it's kind of just glazed over unless you have this. And I like it a lot. I think it adds a lot of because you can kind of see how things are affecting them. I believe it's called Leviathan is the origin of the Reapers, and it's really awesome. You kind of pay a visit to a deep sea planet, and you get to meet the race that constructed them. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's better than anything in the game. And the Citadel one is just kind of it's sort of a campy, almost a Deadly Premonition thing, where it's everything is very over the top. And the villain is a clone of Shepard. And it's very campy, but it's a good opportunity to spend a lot more time with some of your favorite characters, because that was, I believe, sort of an initial complaint about this game, is that there wasn't enough time to just kind of hang out, and you wind up having a party at the Citadel, and it's fun.
So what's the size of that DLC? How much does it add to the Citadel? Because someone could make the most fantastic game of just no space conflict, no doom of humanity, and I just want to be a courier. In the Citadel, something like that. That seems kind of close.
There's actually there's a small hub that's your apartment on the Citadel. It's pretty cool.
Okay, that's cool.
And you get a significant amount of extra areas, but it's essentially it's just because when this game came out, it felt kind of incomplete to me, and this kind of shores off the defenses a little bit. It just makes it feel more like a full experience, I guess a similar way that the DLC for 2 did. But I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but as you get into the last act of this game, you start to feel like it's kind of, they ran out of juice. I think when you mess around with Miranda's quest line, it feels very, I mean, it resolves her character and everything. And I enjoyed that, but it just felt very kind of like the level design and the enemy placement, everything is just kind of like going through the motions. Did you guys feel like that towards the end?
Yeah,
of
it
this
was just
game?
one last thing. It's like, well, shit, we gotta make him do one last thing to, make the campaign this long. And
Yeah.
I was getting impatient at that point. It's like, here's the end of this trilogy, and okay, I guess there's one more thing to wrap up, but
Yeah. Oh, so I didn't even talk about the Crucible is like the main kind of the countermeasure that they're planning on defeating the Reapers with in this game, and it just seems like completely within the time that you're allotted in this game. Like I imagine maybe like a couple of months passing by from beginning of this game to the end, if that. I guess it's all relative in space, but I just like, I can't wrap my head, or even with all the like technical marvels that this universe is capable of, the fact that they build the Crucible in like a couple months is like insane to me, because it's huge. And that is kind of,
while the entire galaxy is under
Is at
siege,
war.
and every home world of everyone is getting attacked. Yeah.
I could see if it was like, if they found it and they're like, we need a certain amount of scientists or engineers to get this working again, like that would have made more sense to me. But go ahead, Greg.
Well, I was going to say, that's why like this game just kind of feels like a game of super highs and super lows, right? In almost anything. I was going to bring that up too, where you have this thing called the Crucible. It's this ultimate weapon, and we need resources, we need people to help build it. But like, you have to convince races to help you. Like, why wouldn't you help? I don't understand. Like, some of this, I don't know, man. I feel you too, where you have this, this game takes place over a couple of months. I don't understand why all races wouldn't contribute, and you have to like wheel and deal. You're all gonna get fucking vaporized. Like, I don't understand.
Not to hit too close to home, but I mean, look at the pandemic over the last year.
I know, dude. Yeah, I spoke too soon. Jesus Christ.
You have people blatantly disregarding the advice of experts and doctors and the CDC,
And hoarding toilet paper.
Dude, the Reapers are a conspiracy, man.
Yeah.
You get people like that in the game, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's been the attitude for a lot of people in this franchise to the Reapers, even when one showed the fuck up at the Citadel and potentially
it was an
iced the
advanced guest
council.
ship. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
It was an advanced guest ship.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt the psychology of
I don't doubt that
but
there would be races that would be more just sort of like, I mean, like the Turians makes perfect sense that they just be like, no, we're the stiff upper lip warrior guys.
I
We're
just like,
gonna
I don't think there
fight
would
the
be enough
Reapers."
time. That's the thing. Like, oh, you want
Yeah.
to work on the Crucible? We got like a day to get this done.
I feel like that would almost be the reason you would need to convince them, because they'd be like, okay, so you're building this thing over here, and like, you think you're gonna be able to finish it? Why wouldn't we just take our chances and try to kill
It's
him?
like IKEA. It's like you snap it together. It's fine. You just get over here. We'll get it
It's
done.
just a floating like model kit in space. And they're like,
Yeah,
we need ships to pull the pieces off.
If this came out now, you'd be walking around looking for, zinc,
Yes. Scanning
The
plans.
Yourself.
microchip shortage.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
you're shooting a
Or
rock
whatever.
with a laser to build the Crucible.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's like a fucking like survival
Yeah,
game.
Oh my god, was that wait, was that a collectibles joke? I missed that. That was funny, dude.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's kind of what leads us into the actual end of the game, wherein the Crucible has to be installed on the Citadel, and the Citadel winds up at Earth. So that's where the final battle takes place. I like the cutscene where you depending on how many people you have recruited, you see all the fleets show up. That's pretty cool. But I think that the final level on Earth is very like truncated. I think it's very kind of like boring. It feels kind of anticlimactic. Not a lot of.
It's basically just a series of multiplayer maps, but just in a single player dressing.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
not
like campaign dressing.
like oh my god, Garrus is wounded or something. Like something like that. And it kind of it's really funny because have you guys seen the video of Shepard's indoctrination? It's called. It's like a theory where, because the ending makes so little sense, is that like the theory is that Shepard is succumbing to Reaper indoctrination, and it's a really it's like edited like a documentary, and it's really compelling because there's certain things like you Harbinger is not even in this game until the ending. He doesn't speak at all, even though he was the sort of the main puppet master of the previous game. And he hits you with his laser, and when you wake up, the entire like surrounding area, like there's trees where there weren't trees before. And it's like, and so it made sense that people were like, no, this was all in his mind, because you are haunted by dreams and nightmares the whole game. And so people are like, oh, his mind is cracking, or her mind is cracking under the stress of trying to unite the galaxy against the Reapers. And it had me for a little bit. I was like, maybe this is what they were doing. But
I don't mean to sound dismissive or like a dick, but I'm going to anyway. I think that is just like the grasping at straws ravings of people who were dissatisfied with the ending of the game that was rushed.
Oh, no doubt.
Well, I mean, obviously it's that, but it's interesting.
But it's
right?
like that video in particular is really well done. Just in terms of,
I'll give you, it is
in the sense of like making something out of nothing, because the end of this game is a couple sort of conversations. Mercifully, it's not like a schlocky boss fight. You kind of have a final speech check with the elusive man up in the Citadel Tower, which also doesn't really make any sense the way it's laid out. So that lent credence to that theory. And then really out of nowhere is the final kind of encounter you have is with is the canon that it's like an AI or it's a ghost, or like what's the deal with that last
the
character?
Star Child thing? I think it's supposed to be an AI that's like manifested by the Crucible. Or
I think
something.
it's like you saw the human child killed on Earth or something, and now it's back. I mean, I thought it was
choosing
like
a form that you're comfortable with, or like that you would be sympathetic to, perhaps.
I was kind of getting like 2001 Space Odyssey vibes, like, oh shit, space toddler.
That's definitely what they were going
your conclusion?
for.
It's like, it's like, okay.
It's pretty much, I think, like the issue a lot of people had with it is that it explains what the Reapers are for, and that doesn't make any sense. And you also, like, until they edited it, they actually added on some extended endings for this game where you have other dialogue options. Initially, you couldn't ask any questions. You just had to accept everything that this character was saying. It's just like, it's no. So here's how it's going to work. You're going to get red ending, green ending, or blue ending. Okay. So go ahead. It's just like that's all that changes, depending on like what of the three paths you, number one, have unlocked, or number three, take. Is, do you want to A, destroy the Reapers as you've planned? B, do you want to try to control the Reapers? But trust me, it's going to work this time. Or C, do you want to join with the Reapers? Trust me, it's going to work this time. So it's these are very big, huge, consequential choices for this ending, and initially you just didn't see them at all. Like, it was very like on fast forward of and then the Normandy got away and they landed on some jungle planet, and that's the end. And you see all the mass relays blow up one way or another, and they didn't think about the implications of that all the races are on Earth, which is like barren, and so that in effect, there would be no way to travel for those races to travel around the galaxy and like eat their own food and stuff, because they established that all the races eat different food. They breathe different air. It's so like, it's, from what I understand, this is hearsay, but I believe the ending was worked on by one or two people instead of the full team like the rest of the game was. Maybe because of spoilers, I don't really know the reasoning behind it, but it seems like, oh, we got this great idea, well, let's not tell anybody, it's genius. But they didn't really take the time to think about like the ins and outs of the implications. Like, what was your impression of the ending of this game the first time you played it?
I kind of viewed it as like inevitable in terms of defeating the Reapers and having some kind of grand choice that saves the galaxy. And I really was serious when I said earlier that I was more stoked about the Genophage than I was about this ending, which is obviously a failure somewhere in the writing department. But I wasn't, totally livid about the disconnect, between choice and actual ending results.
I think I just wanted something like the end of like a Fallout game where they show you like the major characters' fates and how it impacted, and that was just like, it's like a PowerPoint, you know what I mean, like that. And ultimately that's what they wound up doing. It was a free add-on, and there was also an ending where you could essentially refuse to use the Crucible, and that's actually like my favorite ending of all of them.
That one's so dark.
It makes sense, perfect sense with like Shepard's character, because they, in essence, are like always doing things their way. They very much kind of refuse to compromise their morals, and it's in essence, it's saying that if you do that, then everyone will die. And what winds up happening is they show like a hologram of Liara like thousands of years later. In essence, like she's become the new like Prothean VI, and that's how like they're gonna spread the message of how to stop the Reapers next time around. And I think it's like that is so much more like artistic than everything else. I just like, it was just bizarre. It was like to have these three very like, there was like a lot of jokes about it at the time, but it was literally just different colors. And it's so strange because Destroy is the only ending where Shepard seemingly lives, because you see him or her like breathe in under a pile of rubble, but that's like the lowest amount of resources you need is to get that ending. So I'm like, what are you exactly achieving by doing the synthesis ending is the hardest one to accomplish? And there's nothing in particular that they don't explain why it's the best one or why it took so many resources to achieve that one. There's just so many, like it reminded me a lot of the first time I played the end of KOTOR 2. I don't know if anybody else has played that, but that game is also very unfinished at the end. So as soon as I started getting that weird vibe of like, it feels kind of empty and also kind of creepy, I'm like, oh, so they didn't finish this game. It's just,
so I'm looking at the endings here, and so I distinctly remember Synthesis was the one that I chose on my first playthrough.
Likewise,
because Destroy, they make a point of mentioning that Destroy will kill all synthetic life, which means the Geth. And I'm like, well, I just went through all this trouble to save the Geth, so fuck that. And Control just sounded stupid.
Everyone thinks they can control the Reapers. You never can.
Yeah, well, that was the Elusive Man's folly. So I was like, I'm not doing that. And then Synthetic was like, everybody becomes a cyborg. And I was like, all right, fine.
And like, isn't that what Saren wanted? Like, he is like
kind of
as well.
Yeah, but I'm actually looking at the I looked up the endings on like the wiki here, and I think because of the rumored upcoming Mass Effect 4 or whatever that's going to be, it seemingly takes place in the Milky Way, because you see them rebuilding the mass relays in some of the screenshots or like the art, and it says here even on the wiki, the mass relays are quote unquote severely damaged. In the endings, they are not destroyed, and so they kind of are walking that back, because I think they do show that in the PowerPoint I mentioned, because they full on explode in the original ending.
Exactly. They fucking explode. You're not fixing that.
Together.
Yeah.
Well, because that's also, I think, that's partially how they kill the Reapers in the Destroy ending, is like the power of the mass relays exploding. and that energy, I think, is what part of
They
what
wanted
kills
to tie it all together with that. They just didn't think it through. I think, like, because that's a
Well, yeah, I mean-
thematic. Like it's like, well, it's always been about Mass Effect. It's always been about the mass relays. And they're the key to all
but like
this.
that's basically destroying the ability to tell any more stories in this universe that isn't the races turning on each other on Earth and fighting over resources.
God.
Well, the Turians and the Quarians die
It's
off
like Lord of the
slowly because
Flies
there's no food for
on
them.
Earth.
Well,
Yeah.
we've figured it out. Mass Effect 4 is going to be a survival game, and you're just gonna build the arcs again. That's it.
And
Yes.
if you choose to play as a Turian or a Quarian, that's like playing choosing Chris in Resident Evil. It's like it's the harder
Good
version.
harder.
point. Good point. Yeah. Do you guys want to just wrap up our thoughts on this game and I guess the trilogy as a whole?
Yeah, sure. Wow. So we've covered a lot here in terms of all these games. My thoughts on Mass Effect 3. In 2012, when I played this game, it did offend me less. I think at the time, I had less emotional investment in this game than you guys, I think, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, well, the ending is kind of, but like, whatever. And I think I had to play these again as an older adult to kind of see the flaws in the armor here.
Mm-hmm.
Where let's go. I'll be brief. Mass Effect 1, I think, is my favorite one, purely because I like micromanaging and I like RPG stuff, and I think it being sort of a space opera with, very thoughtful dialogue, I think you can kind of check the boxes for me, and I liked it. I mean, this is kind of a hot take. I actually like playing 3 more than I like playing 2, even though I acknowledge 3 is way worse in a lot of aspects. By that I mean, I think the shooting and the combat and the combinations of the RPG stuff in 3, I think it's a good third-person shooter, and when you're actually doing the shooting. I do like playing it, and I think what happened was the more that I played Mass Effect 3, the more that I didn't like it. Like in the first act and a half, I'm rolling around, I'm shooting, I'm blasting. It's a good game, but you start realizing the side quests, there's no dialogue. It kind of feels like the bones of a game. There are all these characters who are coming out of nowhere. I don't know.
They also,
and I understand
in that vein, the second half of the game, I think they start throwing a lot of many tougher enemies at you at once, and it just it really turns into a slog for me at points. I don't know how you felt, but that's how I felt.
Yeah. Yes and no. I just thought in Mass Effect 3, when I was doing the shooting, I liked playing it. When I was doing anything else, I was just like, ugh, this is I thought the other shit was a slog because it just isn't as well. This isn't me. I'm not trying to, take a baseball bat to the writer's room or anything, but clearly either this was rushed or there was some, what did Noah say? There were some failures in the writing room, and I understand if people were immensely disappointed by Mass Effect 3. I'll end it there. Listen, it's a fun game to play, but as it goes on, I got tired of it, and I don't know. They're not going to fix it in the Legendary Edition. I know that. There's really no fixing it. But listen, I liked my replay of this franchise, and I will kick it to Noah next. Why don't you go ahead, dude, about the trilogy?
So I think overall, right, the core gameplay gets stronger and stronger throughout the trilogy, and the world building and the writing gets a little weaker towards the end where it starts to fall off. But overall, totally worth playing. And like I think I said before, overall, the whole trilogy is a great example of the kind of game that you wouldn't necessarily be able to make exactly like that and have the same great critical success and kind of cult classic status as you would back in the day. And if I see you in one of those N7 hoodies, right, I'm totally gonna talk to you. I'm totally gonna strike up a conversation, and it's not gonna be talking trash about the ending of 3 or some of the other downfalls. It's gonna be about how much I enjoyed the series overall.
That's really well said. I really like that. Wow. Wow. If I see you in an N7 hoodie, I'm not going to talk trash about the ending. We're going to talk about how much we like it.
I did see one in the wild once, and that happened. I was stoked. I was like,
it happened to me too. But you want to know the truth? It was 2012. He was in an N7 hoodie. I said, "Hey, nice N7 hoodie." and it turned out to be an EA employee. And he asked me what I thought of the ending. And I was like,
That is wild. Wow.
I don't really know
so
how I
glad
tucked
we
my way out of
uncovered
it. But,
Gotcha, bitch.
oh man, what an encounter that was.
Nick, what are your about the trilogy? Go ahead.
I mean, Noah said it really well. You know, it's for all the blemishes that each of the games, especially 3, has, and 3 not sticking the ending. The entire trilogy in and of itself is like nothing else out there. Or nothing else is like it, I should say. It tells one of my favorite stories overall in terms of just like the characters in the world, in media in general. Honestly, like it's one of my favorite sci-fi worlds to just like think about. I'm writing a Mass Effect 5e campaign right now as like a what if thing. Like I love this universe and I love these games overall. And like you said, Greg, 3 I think plays the best in terms of the just like the pure combat experience and the pure like feel of the weapons and the powers and everything. Even if the companion palette is a little lacking in terms compared to 2 or even 1, excuse me. 1 had the least amount of companions, but it's got the most balance, I think, because you have to spread the roles around each of them. But anyway, I think 1 is my favorite as well. Or no, I don't think I definitely know 1 is my favorite. But yeah, I mean, Noah hit the nail on the head. It's the flaws of the last third of 3 don't destroy the entire franchise, and I guess what I would say is that 3, the entire game is the ending for me, and that's why I think I can kind of just get over it, is because the end of the game sucks, but the end of the trilogy that game does not, because I think you get satisfying send-offs for almost every character, whether they die or whether they don't and they do something else. Orden obviously cures the genophage and sacrifices himself to undo his greatest sin. Thane dies in battle rather than from a disease that he has that's killing him, and you just go on and on. You could talk about all the different characters, but yeah, I think 3 is the ending, not the end of 3.
I really like that.
So, yeah, and I think it wraps up well enough overall, and the fact that they're willing to go back and have the courage to just retcon the end of that and do more adventures in the Milky Way with our established lovable universe and setting and races, I think is great, and I can't wait to see what they do with it.
Beppy, why don't you give us your final thoughts and send us off, dude?
Yeah, no, this is it's hard to overstate just how significant this series was in terms of writing and storytelling and the way it sucked you in for a couple of years. I ultimately, it's tough because this game in particular, my friend had a great way of saying it where he said, this is a great game to play once. And I kind of agree with that, where if you only play it once, you won't see how little your choices have mattered over the course of the series, and it's depressing because it was envisioned as a trilogy, and when you are told that if you kill the Rachni Queen, it's going to have consequences, and it doesn't have consequences, I consider this trilogy a failure of concept. I think it's a brilliant story. I think the writing is spectacular. I don't think it achieved what it set out to do. I would still recommend playing it all the way through, because in this case, the journey is more important than the destination.
So I think that's going to do it for now. We are going to talk about Mass Effect Andromeda next time. So I can't wait for that. Yeah, so hang in there. Hopefully we'll make that one short and sweet. But thank you guys. This has been Goddamn GameCube. Thank you to all of our guests, and we will see you next time.